So good morning to all of you. My name is DHIRAJ. I lead the technology team at MFILTERIT. We are an ad fraud detection tool and help brands in ad fraud and brand safety. The topic for this panel discussion is badvertising. It's a new term being coined and a pretty interesting one because I think it sums up the problems we're going to discuss in this panel today. With me is an interesting panel with advertisers and a tech provider who can help us in resolving or understanding as to what badvertising is all about. So what I'll request is, starting from you, JAHID, if you can quickly introduce yourself and also talk about briefly what the hell is badvertising.
Exactly, it's a hell, yeah. Just that we don't know about it. So hi guys, my name is Zahid. I head digital and content marketing for HDFC Bank. And it's the #1 bank in India at this point of time with 70 to 80% spends on digital. And when digital is so important in our banking scenario, especially to performance or brand visibility, taking digital as the main route, you can very well understand that we need to take care of each and every step. Where is my money going? How am I measuring it? And what's happening to this entire world of digital advertisement out over there? Now, I am seeking questions from the technical guys, from the technical partners, and from the entire external market. Anybody can help me out in two broad sectors. And I'll just kind of take 2 minutes to detail it right now, or you want to come back to it later?
No, please go ahead.
Yeah? Okay. So, first is the way ad is being served, right? Digital, unlike traditional media, is fragmented not only in the way content is being consumed, but the way ads are being served in each of the platforms. So what is the viewability definition? YouTube has its own definition, Facebook has its own definition, come the monster of OTT, then we have the publishers serving a video, it's confusing. I don't know what's viewability, right? Then, who is viewing it? Is it a bot? Is it a same pixel with a lot of ads stacked? Who is viewing it? Third, if somebody's, where is my ad being viewed? So brand safety, ad fraud, viewability, 3 of my key components. Who can help me solve this and give me in one platform? Second, if my advertisement is happening, who is helping me to give me a unified measurement platform? See, what's the thumb rule? One guy should see how many impressions of your ad? 6, 7, 4, 5, I don't know. You have to give me a thumb rule. But then now if you have to define YouTube 5 times, Facebook 5 times, Hotstar 5 times, right? Display 5 times, programmatic 5 times. So one person can be tagged 25 times and there is no way I can draw a suppression over there in the campaign. There are other tools that DMP and all coming in, but that's too way evolved, too much way expensive. So how can I move beyond the walled gardens of all the digital platforms and get me a unified campaign measurement tool? So very broad questions which I'd like to get an answer to this entire platform, and let's see how we can solve this on this whole issue, right?
Yeah, sounds like a tall ask, Jahid, but yeah, we'll try our best for it. What about you, Manav?
So, if you look at ad fraud, right, and from a global standpoint, there is no right number that, people have been able to arrive at. But the range that I read on eMarketer is anywhere from $6.5 billion to $19 billion globally, annually, right? So if you look at the scale and if you look at the entire ecosystem, right, and which is what we were discussing as well, that, where does the responsibility lies? Is it on the publisher? Is it on the algorithms? Is it on the advertiser? Where is that, not blame as much, but where is the responsibility lies and what kind of tools and what kind of solutions are available, and why should, in fact, if you take a step back, you realize that why should there be a tool required when I have paid for a particular, ad to be viewed, as he rightly said, right? So apart from who, when, how, and where is the responsibility of that platform or that publisher which is showing that ad, right? And to what extent he's gonna repatriate back to the advertiser in case either the ad has not been viewed or has been viewed but not by the right human or not by the right target, right? I think those are the questions that we should all seek answers to.
Got it. What about you, Kushal?
A very interesting sort of discussion which is happening across the world in terms of boardroom discussions of marketers as well. And I lead a company called Integral Ad Science, which has been in this space for about 12 years now. And I think our entire philosophy revolves on the fact that about almost 50% of all traffic on the digital space is bought, which means that when you're sort of spending your large marketing dollars, you don't really know in terms of whether it's going to human traffic or someone intelligent more than us, perhaps, right? So when companies as large as Unilever, Procter & Gamble, the largest spenders, put tons of money on digital and other platforms, and we tend to use the word digital so easily, but the fact is brand safety and almost all these measures is not just about digital. When you sort of spend money on even outdoor, for example, we don't really know in terms of sort of when you put measures of how many people are going to sort of, I think, see the ad. And there's some matrix, the outdoor guy would say that, hey, this road has 1,000 people passing it or 500 cars, and therefore you put the ad there and you'll get therefore some amount of salience for the brand. But the same question when sort of, I think, we ask these questions from the duopoly, which is probably sort of, I think, more with it today and sort of says that, hey, this is measurable or this is viewable or pretty much all that. We take it, I think, in a sense, to be answerable to say that because it comes from very large organizations, so we kind of give it that sense of maybe, I don't know, as a marketer, we don't challenge it as much because we say, Google can't be wrong or Facebook can't be wrong. But that's where I think perhaps the big sort of, I think, kind of carpet just went under the floor when sort of the same largest companies pulled out their biggest monies 3 or 4 years back. So the spends went away, and I think that's the time when I think our company got really sort of known world over as well. And not just us, across the world itself, there's a large emphasis in terms of the fact that if you're spending such crazy amount of money, do you even really know in terms of whether the context of where, for example, the advertising is going? I'm giving a recent example. We had about 5 or 7 clients recently who clearly said that, we don't want to be associated in any manner with the Indian political situation. So you may have an advertiser who consciously decides that, when Mr. Modi's pictures come up, we want to make sure our brand comes up. And that's the KPI they send out to their agency because they know that India Times is going to have larger impressions when there's news around politics, and therefore put the ad up there, there's a larger chance. But the fact is, that perhaps may not work with a lot of advertisers who say, politics or religion or X is not brand safe for us. So say, for example, when we work with a client like a GSK, we're so finicky about the fact that, it has to be so easy that there could be no element of surprise as well, which means that even if, for example, if kids are shown in a particular video which is not relevant to what GSK standards are, it sort of not allowed. I'm going to try and sort of, in fact, take you back to sort of an example which kind of we got triggered and we sort of had phone calls going out to headquarters. Is all of us know of a very large brand which suddenly got into the whole space, which is Patanjali, which spends huge amounts of money across all media. And there was this video which was of the chairman of the company, which got sort of trolled as well. And the video was kind of not in good spirit as well. And for some strange reason, the brand managers, when they put their money, actually had their brand, Patanjali toothpaste, on the same video. We had calls saying, remove this video literally in nanoseconds. Meaning it was just not right? Which means today, for example, we're talking about the fact that advertising needs to be correct. But the fact is, all of this today happens pretty much programmatically and through machines, right? So the fact is sort of how do you do it real time? Which is why I think, Dheeraj, it makes more relevant sense for, I think, marketers today to invest in tools and technology which can literally have some sort of a artificial intelligence mechanism which understands pages, and there's sort of scientists which sort of say that, hey, this works, this doesn't work, and you sort of can't have your ad there.
So I think one statement I can make, which I think if all of you can take back home, is last year's number for bot versus human traffic online was 56%. What that means is machines have already overtaken us. Machines are more than human beings on the online internet. And that talks volumes of the level of ad fraud and talks volumes of where your digital money is going. And that number is last year. It's actually expected to grow exponentially this year. So that's one food for thought for all of us. I think what I hear from the panel is Badvertising is about setting correct standards, setting standards which are common for all, understanding what the hell is viewability, making sure that the performance or the ad spends are correctly measured and the ROAS, the return on ad spends are correctly measured. I also understand from Manav is that who do you hold responsible and how do you get chargebacks for this? So one thing is, okay, a fraud happened, right? Now what do you do after that? How do you make sure you recover your money about it? And the third aspect which I think came out was brand safety, how brands need to be cautious of where their ads are running, and are they actually aware that their ads might be running in places or placements which might impact them rather than doing any benefit of it. So I think those are the different aspects which this panel will try and cover. So let me go to you, JAHID, and bring back that discussion on. So in your experience in HDFC Bank, what kind of issues have you seen, whatever you can disclose about? And what did you do to recover that money? Manav was hinting on that. And how did you solve that out, or is it still solved for you or not?
Okay, so let's say I'll give you two different examples where we can recover money or where it's just a lesson for us to learn for the next campaign. Okay, in one of the cases where it's, let's say, a lot of leads are, it's a lead hungry place, right? Banking, performance, aggressive, right? So when we do this lead kind of stuff, okay, what happens is a lot of leads come in. Bots, yes, 52%, they have overtaken human and they have overtaken in terms of intelligence too. Because it's now, let's say if we tie up with affiliates in terms of lead, which is not only a lead, but it has to be a verified lead. And the definition of a verified lead is a call has gone to them and they have answered. Okay, bot has cracked that too. So now there is no way you can define that, okay, the call has happened, that guy is not responding, that means it's a bot, so forget it. No, I'll not pay that affiliate. No, they have cracked that part too. So it's really cautious. Okay, so what we do is we try, whenever we go beyond, so what's something that we're noticing is, this is majorly happening in the long tail funnel of my campaign. Okay, not in the major channels. Okay, but then if it has to be scalable, we have to go beyond. And so when we go beyond, we kind of, the kind of deal that we strike with them, we are very cautious of that. And we ensure that we do basis the pay after verifying from the tools, what is a bot lead, what is a bot registration. Like in one of my app install and app registration campaigns, so what we saw was very good cost per registration when we actually evaluated. In fact, the tool was a MFILTERIT tool that we used. 15% was bot. And they had not only ensured installation, they had ensured registration, and these guys have a ability to do a first transaction also, or a first click, first event. Depends as to what kind of campaign deals that you strike. Okay, so we have to be, so the tools obviously helped us. The only thing that we could do very clearly and loudly is we evaluate before paying, we analyze, we reduce the entire registration. Obviously, we don't report, and then we don't pay. And that's the way we our way of indemnification,
So I think one key takeaway is if any of you are actually spending money and assuming that if I'm getting a lead or if I'm getting a registration or I'm getting a sale, how can that be wrong? You might be in for a surprise. Fraudsters have managed to fake sales, have managed to fake registrations, as JAHID mentioned, have actually managed to fake a phone call. So all of this is easily possible.
The indirect impact is, let's say you have a finite call center, okay, who has to now call to all these bot leads, and your bandwidth is getting choked over there, and not in actually a real call, which actually will give you much more incremental benefit.
So not only are you paying for bad advertising, you're actually paying for your infrastructure cost on your call center as well. Okay. What about you, Manav? What did you experience in your past and current organizations, and what have you done about it?
So if you really look at the industry verticals, right, you realize that the largest, fraud happened in e-commerce, and after e-commerce, it is largely the entertainment and OTTs, as you rightly said, which are now taking up, and I think that's after that is your BFSI. So from, that entire breadth, if you realize that not only it is IVTs or brand measurements, it is largely the inhuman traffic, downloads, clicks, impressions, right? Across the spectrum, it has permeated so much that you just, can't do about it. And India, from a ranking standpoint, ranks in top 5, if not top 7, when it comes to fraud, ad fraud. And, from the theoretical standpoint, as a marketer, one would see that why should I really be running around and implementing the anti-fraud solutions, when at the end of the day, I am giving you money to run my ad. I am qualifying the TG where the ad has to be run. I'm qualifying the audience, where the ad has to be shown. And you are the one who is responsible for bringing in the traffic. So those filters, those checks, those balances have to be either at a publisher end or a network, and all. When we're, looking at data, you guys will be surprised to know that, globally amongst top 5,000 sites which have syndicated their inventory programmatically, something as basic as ads.text has been implemented only in 77% of those, right? And if you look at that specter in India, it'll be much more minuscule. Right?
By the way, ads.text has already got hacked.
Correct.
So,
right?
Unfortunately, before it could roll out, it's already got hacked.
Correct. So, we've seen those initiatives, like TAG and all, where, trustworthy accountability group accreditations have happened. But at the end of the day, why should there be need of a tool? I'm not saying that you don't need MFILTERIT, right? Or any such anti-fraud tool, but somehow as a ecosystem or as an industry, we need to put our brains together, and this responsibility has to be shared where the money is being spent, not the one who is spending the money. To me, that is a holy grail.
I need to challenge that, Manav. So are you saying the advertiser is not responsible for their money? Are you saying that the platforms, the publishers, they should be careful about it, and the advertiser should, hey, he's the one who's spending the money, why should he care about where he's spending the money?
No. So if you, went through the earlier complex psychology presentation that MMA made, you realize a marketer's challenge, right? You have invested on creative, you have invested on people, you have invested on communication, right? And that's when you go out looking at where your audiences are, right? You go beyond Google and Facebook, and that's when you say, okay, I would need such audiences, and I trust that particular platform to bring in those audiences. So the limited point that I'm trying to make is that I'm paying the CPM or whatever matrix, whether it is CPD or whether it is CTR or whether it is CPM based, any matrix you pick, right? I agree to that matrix. In the contract, we agree to that it is humans who are going to see, because I've qualified the audiences. So the limited point I'm trying to make is, why should that responsibility rest on me? It has to be on the person who is representing to me that the platform or the ad is being viewed by humans.
So what you're saying is that is it too much to ask for that my money should go to humans and not bots? Right?
Exactly.
Okay, so Kushal, what's your view on it? Do you think letting the platforms, and platforms are now becoming broader, there are OTTs, there are walled gardens, do you think letting them decide on fraud or brand safety aspects is the right way to go? Because don't you think they would have a vested interest, because they're going to earn out of the media money? So would their interest be aligned by the in line with what the advertiser is expecting?
So we've all read and we've known that, the largest companies around the space, which is Facebook and Google, are not here for charity. They take our data, they make usage of that, pretty much all that, and they make tons of money at the back of that. Having said that, if you really want to sort of still say that, this is Mark's company, he can't be sort of wrong, I could trust my money with it is all ridiculous hogwash. So you can't in any manner sort of say that, hey, I can't trust Dainik Jagran, but I'll trust Mark Zuckerberg. It's being ridiculous to sort of say as a marketing head of a company that, I'll take it with a pinch of salt. So the fact is, you can't do a spray and pray and say, because today, 70% of the budgets may go to those large two companies, but 30% is growing. And with the OTT platforms still coming into the play as well, we believe definitely that the split's going to be about 50-50 in the next 2 years to come for sure. Having said that, as a marketer, it's going to be particularly more important to have some sense of responsibility to your own marketing budget, and you can't trust anyone. Today, for example, you can't trust your own sort of children or your wives, your own family. How can you perhaps, in any manner, make a statement saying, for example, that you really can sort of trust where your media money is going? So which only means that I would really advocate that marketers need to take onus of it themselves. If they've got to have every element of CPM put, I think sort of many years back, marketers went ahead and said, I will ad serve well, and I'll spend a certain element of a percentage of my CPM or whatever different way of doing it and say, okay, I'll do that. I would think already, for example, if you look at the Western world, 80% of the largest advertisers use tools and technology to ensure that when marketing happens, and I can tell you, for example, that we've begun to work with relevant, I'll give you an example even here, for example, when we work with a auto manufacturer and practically every sort of quarter there's a new car being launched. When a car being launched, one is to sort of say they want to talk about brand and value and creation in terms of sort of what the car is all about. At the same time, they have the same aspects as what he would have in terms of a bank to have leads for test drives for their sort of, so they have two larger KPIs. But having said that, they've got their own caveats in terms of saying, we shouldn't be on X kind of websites. We should have a certain benchmark of viewability. It's moved from viewability now to say, I will only pay for time in view, which means that if someone has seen my ad lesser than, for example, of 10 seconds or whatever different measures are, I won't pay. And that's where the whole discrepancy typically happens between the publishers and the marketers, wherein you may put certain benchmarks, and if you're a large marketer, you'd probably get your way around and say you'll get freebies back from the publisher. But if you're a smaller client, what really happens?
I think Rohit is going to be worrying about this. We just talked about why 1 second is important, and now we have brands saying that we're going to pay for amount of time people actually looked at the ad, right, in seconds.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, interesting.
One thing I don't do, and just on, so I don't know about wives and children, but certainly my boss is trusting me, and that's why we have to, give every buck of money that we are spending on digital marketing. Okay, so see, nobody intends to do fraud. Okay, let's put it this way. My agency who's working with me, okay, all are human. Humanly, it's impossible to manage the ocean of digital spread that's lying out over there, right? And it's more the user-generated content that's coming up by the day, which is, and which people are using to, so I want to use more of user-generated content because I know he's an influencer for me, he has got great blogging spots, put my advertisement over there. And then when the long tail is so huge and so lengthy, it's not possible maybe for one person, two person, three people, okay, to actually manage the entire end-to-end. That's where machine comes into play. Machine comes into play both from serving point of view and both from ensuring that it's being served in the right way, viewability happens, and fraud doesn't happen, so that it's the right guy who's viewing it at the right spot, right? So I think that kind of is where I think what Manav is trying to understand, that yes, but why should we take care, or the onus is only on us, that we have to, as I rightly said, right, first crack the creative, first fight for the budget, then the creative. When everything goes live, then get this tool, okay, and then ensure that the tool is leveraged properly to get the right efficacy of the whole platform. So everything is on us, right?
Yeah, now. I mean, I think what you're basically saying is that, hey, let me do the creative part and someone else handle the tech part.
There's a lot of science in campaign management also after creative, yeah.
I'm sure. So my 2 bits on it is that, you definitely need to have protection in place, right? It's basic expectation that if you have a bank, you need to have a guard, right? As low tech as a guard is, but you need to invest in a guard, right? You might say that, hey, I have the world's best vault in place, which has biometrics and it has fingerprinting, but you still need that guard who will enter a registry and say, these are the people who actually entered the vault. My sense is that having basic protection always helps. Who will pay for it effectively? I think the cost of that security or protection will automatically come from the savings which you will derive by not paying for all that junk traffic, which means that effectively from your finance point of view, at least it will be an ROI positive case. But yes, I think it's important that at least as an advertiser, you're aware about it. You are actually bringing in that protection and making sure that there is someone who's independently, neutrally tracking it and reporting to you that are you spending money in the wrong direction or not. I think that's more important because otherwise you might end up wasting a lot of money assuming that if you're getting leads and you're getting sales and you're getting registrations, which is obviously good for a business, but not necessarily good in terms of wasting of money.
So let me simplify it, okay? When you spoke about guard and when you spoke about a tool that one needs to invest in to gauge the fraud, right? The limited point that we've been trying to make and labor upon is that at the end of the day, if it is all algorithms that you are dealing with, And here is that, in terms of a tool, whether it is Moat or IAS, so, let's keep the regulator out, let's keep that watchdog out right now. At the end of the day, when you pick any of such tool to detect fraud, right, you trust that tool. The limited point that we've been trying to make, that why that tool can't be implemented on the supply side, right, or the publisher side or the network side. That is one. And B, as you very briefly touched upon at the end, the onus of paying for that tool. So today, what is the flow? I execute a campaign, I invest, let's say $100, out of which I realize, using your tool, that 40% of that has been a wastage, right? Then I go back to all those entities in the value chain, asking them to repatriate me that $40 which have been wastage, right? Whereas I'm paying for the tool as well. Why is it that those entities in the value chain don't invest in such technologies which detect fraud proactively and bill me $60 rather than $100? That's the limited point, right? And you can't justify it by saying that boss, you are spending money, you should be cautious of your money. Of course, I'm spending money and I'm cautious of my money, which is why I know that out of $100, $40 have been a wastage. But that can't rely solely on us.
So let me just answer that as well for you. And it's not about sort of saying that you've got to sort of invest in those tools. So we have publisher partnerships as well, which means that today, for example, if the smallest advertiser sort of reaches out to, for example, a company like Google or Facebook or any other publisher, they could actually ask for a solution which is kind of third-party validated. And there's end-to-end seamless integration from our side as well, which means that he doesn't need to sort of spend money on a tool, but he could just take it with a huge leap of faith then, because the fact is we're almost like accrediting real time of literally even before the impression gets served, we know where it's going to be served. So programmatically, it's sort of all tuned in the system as well. So to answer your question, Manav, and for the audience as well, that you really can, and we're now working with pretty much almost all the publishers across the world. So for example, even in India, if you want to sort of advertise on a OTT platform like a Sony Live or a Hotstar, for example, you could ask for viewability, brand safety, or a couple of others as KPIs and benchmarks for your campaign.
But let me ask you a question. Say the tool has been implemented by Hotstar and Z5 and all the OTT partners.
Right.
Now, but what about the neutrality of it? What about the commercial intent behind it? The publisher or the platform is actually going to be earning from the media spend. So for the publisher, the intention of weeding out fraud may not always be there. I'm not doubting the integrity of people. What I'm just saying is that under the pressure of margins and targets and year-end issues, what stops a publisher from showing something, and if the commercial interest is not lined up towards the advertiser might be taken for a ride. What's your thought on that?
So I think it's not about just about, it's a whole ecosystem which is being created, and I think at
that's what
maybe
we started
a global
from.
level as well. It's in a sense of things. If you look at the IAB, the way it's functioning, it's doing a lot in terms of just ensuring that the kind of full ecosystem is kind of all attached to it as well. So no one's really going to say that, hey, only you're responsive or only you're or whatever. But the fact still remains that at the end of the day, the publisher is doing his bit because he's got his own KPIs of goals in terms of sort of revenue targets and pretty much all of that. And as a marketer, you've got your own challenges to sort of scale, for a bank or anyone for that matter as well, right? So there is that leap of faith. But the point is still, the question is that, going back to the holy grail, that because digital is literally sort of measurable real time, we ask these sticky questions. We don't really ask these questions when it comes to a full page ad in a newspaper or somewhere else, and we'd never say, brand safe, viewability, who's going to want me to take it with ease, right? No problem. We've got a brand launch coming. Let's put the money. Let's put 5 crores on 2 full spreads. But here, because everything can be, literally sort of micro targeted, let's really put the granules, let's really get the whole ecosystem shaken up and put so many cogs and wheels. But the fact is, we're getting to that space, and it's only going to become like commonplace, and we'll do it easily in the next couple of years.
I remember a leading newspaper chain printing newspapers and dumping them into a warehouse so that they could jack up their readership numbers, so that advertisers could feel that their reach has actually reached to so many millions of users, while all those newspapers are dumped into a warehouse. Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with you, Kushal, that digital has actually, people expect more from digital. People expect more measurement, more transparency, more performance. Dominantly, most advertisers may not expect performance from a TV campaign or an FM campaign, but they'll expect more performance from a simple digital campaign. So yeah, I mean, I think that's how digital is structured. I see that more as a challenge which I think digital has to take up with, and I'm sure advertisers will realize that the non-digital channels are probably, we don't hear so much about fraud there because they're actually unmeasurable or not transparent, rather than the fact that if they were actually transparent, you might have all sorts of can of worms coming out there. But okay, we are about to have we are short of time. So Jahid, 2 quick sentences, your key tips for advertisers out there on what they should be aware about or they should be careful about when they're running the campaigns.
See, the key USP of digital is what we just said. It's measurable. And that's why it's growing at a speed which nobody else is growing. Okay, but yes, when it grows as Spider-Man, with more responsibility or with more power becomes more responsibility, right? So it's a real powerful medium. If you are the marketeers or you are the publisher or you are the agency to a very key marketeer of yours, we'll have to ensure the whole thing is people were not even open to digital, right? Now they are open, people are going aggressive, they have started pushing the pedal. Now that you have done this, it's very important to understand what's next. Next is to get the right measurement, to get the efficacy of the entire campaign that we're doing. And in this process, it makes sense to invest 5%, 6% of your marketing budget in key integral tools, be it the publisher, be it the marketeer. That's separate conversation. To invest in these tools and have a better measurement of your campaign, to be happy with a more accurate number than to suffice yourself and the top management with a much more superfluous report, and we don't know exactly what to derive out of it. So I think key thing, keep pushing the pedal, but invest in tools which is not more than 5 to 6% of your media cost, and that will help us to get us more accurate reports. But keep questioning and that how do I get a unified approach, be it IAS, be it Nielsen, who can give me the answer? How can I break the walled garden to get more of a unified approach and campaign approach and reporting?
So basically follow true metrics rather than vanity metrics and measure your campaigns, right? What about you, Manav?
So I think in times to come, marketers will have to be much more smarter. 2 of us are here right now, right? But as the technology will grow, and as you are the one on whose shoulders the spends rest, so it becomes your responsibility as well to ensure that you get the maximum bang out of the buck. So I mean, no one else can take away that from you. That is one. Second, I think as some of the biggest spenders from a brand standpoint have showed the power, and the largest video platform had to really step back and think how they're gonna impact the brand safety, I think a time will come because...
Do you want to expand that? Because I don't think you've talked about it.
So, if you look at it from the brand environment standpoint, we've seen the cases of Colas, Unilevers, and P&Gs of the world who have compelled YouTube in the past to really relook at their brand safety guidelines because they took a collective call not to spend on that, and that actually impacted at a scale, their P&Ls. Right? Yeah. So I think increasingly as an ecosystem, it is the responsibility on the various stakeholders of the ecosystem to raise the standard. If you don't do that, right, you will see again such smart marketers compelling those entities which are, indulging in fraud to really compel them to go back and think.
Got it. What about you, Kushal?
I think the point we're making is pretty much common flaw that you've got to invest in tools and technology, but the fact is you've got to be agile as well. So for example, I only think that as a marketer or the entire ecosystem, something new will come around again in the next 3 to 4 years, or some new method to the madness. So I think also the industry is grappling with some sort of unified measure of success. So I think time is going to sort of have some sort of standards come out as well. Lots of associations talking about it, but I think that's pretty much in the future for sure that there's going to be some element of standardization of reportage which comes out. But the largest point is very clearly that please invest in every single rupee that you're spending. The onus can be a collective sort of way of saying who's going to sort of bear what end of that, but it's not later, but do it now. And for any sort of small, large, any sort of client whose performance, whose brand or anyone, make sure that you know where your money is being spent.
Great. I'll summarize some of my suggestions for advertisers. Number one, have a tool, of course. Number two is, if you don't want to put into a tool, use your common sense. There is a lot of data, there's a lot of information which is available out there. Have you and your team look at data, look at IP addresses, look at timestamps, look at user agents, look at make and model. I don't know how many of you actually know the details behind each of these phrases I used, but you should. If you are aware about them and you look closely, you'll actually find patterns. Bots, as good as they may be, will leave patterns. They will leave indicators. They will leave a signature, a cookie trail, which can help you track that down. So if for some reason you don't want to invest in a platform or a tool, please be on top of your own data. Be looking at it, and you might see from a common sense perspective that things won't add up. And if they don't, at least you would know that which side of the mess are you in. Time's up, but thank you so much, and thank you so much for being a participative audience. And yeah.